I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. Oh, I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years, and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all, we promised we'd be cordial.
Hi, listeners. Kristin Walker here, and I am bringing in a co-host today, Georgia Lundy. Hi, Georgia.
Hello there.
Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And our guest is Drew Linsalata. He has a book, a couple of books actually. One of them is called The Anxious Truth. The other is An Anxiety Story. And he also has a podcast about anxiety. And so, Drew, welcome to Mental Health News Radio.
Thank you very much, Kristin. I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. So how did you hear about us, or did we come to, I don't remember how we came to know each other.
That's a reasonable question. I honestly don't know. I'd have to look back at my email. Either you reached out to me or
the other way.
Yeah, or the other way. I think a friend of mine who also podcasts somehow ran across you, and I may have reached out to you just to learn more about the network. So either one, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I always like to know because that means people are listening. So yay.
Sure.
Awesome. So big question, and I will ask unreasonable questions later, but no, I'm kidding. So Drew, how long have you been podcasting?
I have been podcasting on the subject of anxiety disorders officially for 5+ years.
Wow.
Yep. So it's been a little while now.
Yeah, you're a veteran like me.
Oh yeah, I'm an old pro now.
So what made you, be okay? Like, did you have a background in this, or what made you okay with sharing this, especially this kind of information? It's not like you're getting on and talking about widget making. So, what was the impetus for you doing it?
I remember sitting in my my living room one night. It was fairly late because I'm just kind of a night owl, and when I was going through the worst of my anxiety problems, and I've had them throughout my life in different forms and different periods of my life, when I finally got to the point, and I'm 54, so when I first started dealing with things like panic disorder and agoraphobia, there was no internet. I'm old enough where there was no internet. But in one of the other iterations of that, and I've been through that 3 or 4 times in my life before I finally solved the problem, there was an internet. So the last time that I kind of dealt with that stuff, I was able to meet people online, and I was able to make friends on YouTube where people were making anxiety videos and sharing them and encouraging people, and we all became friends. And I felt so strongly about that group of people that I felt like, I really should try and pay back some of that help that I got. And
right.
I just, fired up a mic and started talking about my own experience and what worked for me, and cognitive behavior therapy and that approach to the disorder. And it just kept going. And,
nice.
Kind of accidentally, I built a pretty large audience, and here I am 5 years later and 2 books later and big social media following later. And yeah, here you go.
Wow.
Who knew? No idea. I had no idea it was going to turn into this. So,
I say the same thing. People are like, oh, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I don't know that I wake up happy. I have no idea.
Right. Like, where are you going to take this thing? And I always say, like, I don't know. I'm not even sure what I'm talking about next week half the time.
Right.
So, like, we're going to make it up as we go along. But I do love it. I feel like it's a privilege to be able to pay the help back and watch people take the information and, turn things around after sometimes being stuck for years. So I'm thrilled that it turned out this way.
Yeah, I love to when I get, because I always tell a podcaster, listen, this is as much a journey. I know you want to help people. We're a network full of do-gooders, which is awesome. But I'm always like, you're going to be surprised at how much this changes your life, like supercharges your growth, everything. So when I get a podcaster that, they're super excited, they're on their 10th episode and they're like, you know what? This is helping me personally. That's when I go, yes. The
It's great,
infection
isn't it?
spread, the good infection,
It's true. I mean, before I was podcasting and talking to microphones, I spent 5 years before that in online forums and,
Okay.
as an administrator and a moderator in different forums that are revolved around that topic. So I already kind of had a track record of helping out. And I learned back in those days that is therapeutic. I mean, I don't necessarily need the therapeutic aspect of it now, but there's definitely growth involved. The people that listen to me and I interact with, and I'm privileged to interact with every day, they teach me things every single day. Every day.
So there's myself. I appreciate you. I love a lot of what you talk about. I deal with that myself.
Well, there you go. And you know what? I could probably learn something from you too. So the thing that I really love about this is, especially when we have the opportunity to build social media communities around our podcasts, it's not one way. It's not one way. I get to meet people. I get to interact with them. They ask me questions. I answer. They teach me things like I teach them things. It's really great. Really great.
Yeah, it's really inspiring too. That's why I want Georgia she's going to launch a podcast as soon as she's ready. And I got to know her. Well, we're neighbors, but I just started reading the things that you would post, Georgia, online. And I go, oh my God, this woman's mine. She needs to be saying that out loud with the microphone in front of it,
Do it. Definitely.
But when you walk agoraphobia, I don't go out much. So this opportunity has now presented itself, and I'm really excited.
Well, that's interesting because it is one of those things that, certainly is appealing if you're having an issue with that. You can do it right from your living room or your car, as the case may be.
Right. Because listeners, I'm in my car. And so if you just heard my right clicker, my turn signal come on, it's because I hit it with my foot. So anyway.
I'm not going to ask how your foot was on the turn signal. I just met you and
home cleaning it, and the vacuum and podcasting don't really mesh well. So sometimes you get in your car and you do it in your car.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, now talking about what's going on with you, I feel like it's tired for me to say what I'm going to say next, even though it isn't. I have so many male friends. Actually, I have more male friends than I do female friends, and I have a lot of both. But I'm surrounded by men, obviously, who share their feelings and share what's going on with them because, look at what they talk about on the network. But it still is true that men aren't known for being big sharers of, being very vulnerable. So how was it for you to be comfortable being vulnerable about, this is a big deal. It's not like you have a stubbed toe.
To be totally honest with you, I have never even given it a second thought. Like, it's just, yeah, I mean, I would have to say I'm fortunate to have that gene in me that says I don't care what you think about me. So, it just seems a logical thing to do.
That's
to
impressive.
Share. Yeah, like I've never have even given it a second thought. Like, oh, this is embarrassing, or the people will think I'm weak. I don't care if you think that. Doesn't matter.
What you are doing for other men out there, like I've specifically shared it with two men that I know that also deal with anxiety and stuff like that, and predominantly I sent yours to them because you're male, and it gives them that. It's like it's okay to feel these things if you're listening to another man, I think.
Right.
I've been told that, and it appears, and look, you may know this more than I do. I'm anecdotally, it appears that the space is kind of female dominated, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Right.
But most of the bigger voices in mental health online do appear to be female. So, and that's great. And there's so many great contributors, but I have been told by men that, like, well, one of two things: either, it's great because you make me feel like it's okay to talk about these things, which I love.
Right.
And it is okay, or sometimes it backfires a little bit. And I've actually found where men will say, like, well, sometimes I love what you say, but you make me feel bad because I can't be like you. And that's heartbreaking. Yeah, that's unintended. And if you're listening right now and you're a dude, like, you're just like me. Everybody's just like me. I'm not special. And that's I feel so strongly about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important with the men in the mental health field, especially with so many of our veterans coming back and anxiety is a big part of PTSD.
It is. And like my statistics show me that my audience is overwhelmingly female. And even in the community surrounding the podcast, I would say that women are much more likely to be vocal and active than men. They're more likely to lurk, pop up now and then. And it's definitely that thing. It's that stigma. It's the embarrassment. We all know what's going on. It's terrible.
Well, yeah, and it's true. My son is the lurker on social media. He finds it vile, and he would never go on it at all. And he does talk. I mean, he's 31, so he grew up in a whole different generation. He does talk about anxiety. I did a show with him, and I said, well, why, how did you know what depression and so on? He goes, because it's called Google.
Right. And hey, the benefit of having that, right?
Right. I was like, well, Mama didn't have Google. Mama had a black and white newspaper that got her fingers dirty. And he's like, what was that? I don't know what that is.
I can so relate. I literally, when this first happened to me, it was back in 1986. I had 6 months before anybody even remotely said the term panic attack or panic disorder to me. Where were you going to find that? There was no place to find that. So I get it. Yeah.
I was interesting because you've been doing this almost as long as I have. So we're in terms of, the internet year being now 30 days. It used to be 90 days, but now it's 30 days. So we're veterans in this, and I've certainly seen the tide change, not enough, but hey, I'm happy that there's even some around mental health, the reduction of stigma, all of that. That's just been me watching it. I'm in the industry of it too, on the business side of things, and that's been nice. But what is your perspective on that, since you've been doing this for, since 2015?
Well, I would agree with you. And I think we do owe, look, social media has its problems for sure, but we do owe it some debts of gratitude. And that is one of them. I think being a conduit for expression and being able to get some of these topics out on the table so people can hear about them and know they're not the only ones dealing with these problems, I think has been really helpful in letting people start to discuss them a little bit more. So I would agree. It has opened up. And honestly, the data seems to indicate that. Like the listenership is accelerating at a rapid pace. So I have a feeling the word is spreading somehow.
Everybody and their brother got a podcast now. It's
right.
I'm like, oh, now Demi Moore has a podcast. And now, like it seems to come along with being a celebrity. You got to have this, you got to have that. And now you got to have a podcast too.
I need a podcast is the 2020 equivalent of I need a blog from 2009.
Yes. And I love it when people come to me and they're like, well, I really want a podcast, but I want to wait. I've got to get my blog finished. And I'm like, why?
Right. Why?
It's so old news. Unless you're writing something that is 3 sentences or less, no one gives a crap about your writing.
Your podcast is a blog. So each podcast episode is your blog entry. So
exactly. You can have those transcribed. Exactly. And they do pretty good. I remember when I first got a Google phone number, and it would transcribe my voicemails, and it was so bad. I think I forwarded a message to someone I was meeting with for them to laugh, because it said, oh, we're going to go have lunch and meet for lunch and eat some HIV.
Come on, Google. You can do better than that. You're Google.
Wow. Okay. But it's so much better now. Now it's almost verbatim. It's transcribing exactly what you say. So.
It is getting smarter. I have Otter doing transcription for me even as we speak right now.
Nice.
I know. Nice. It's good service. Anyway.
So, okay. How do you go to podcast conventions and do that kind of, do you do industry type stuff in terms of podcasting?
Never.
I don't either. Yay!
I don't even. To be honest with you, Kristin, I wouldn't even know where to find one.
I know. Same here.
Maybe that's bad, but it might be a flaw. I'm not sure, or it might be a blessing. I can't tell.
I went to one just by accident because I was at a mental health conference, and there was one next door, and I literally had a mini panic attack and major anxiety as I walked through, thinking, oh, this is all the stuff that I don't know how to do. I'm embarrassed to even say I'm a podcast. It just it was like a walk of shame. So I just told myself then, you don't need to, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. My opinion on that, look, that's fine. Go to trade shows and conventions and all that stuff. I have no problem with what anybody does. I don't get to judge. But I really think in the end, it comes down to, if you have something to say and you are expert at it and passionate about it, fire up a mic, put it out there. And if the content is good, some people will want to hear it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to necessarily invest in tons of gear and be
Right.
taught and take webinars and masterminds, and you don't have to do that.
Oh.
Just talk, just speak.
Yeah, and like you said, not that there's anything wrong with mastermind groups. I just know that I've done enough of those. If someone even says mastermind to me, I'm like, no, just don't even talk about it. I'm done. I never want to do one of those again.
You and I get along great. I can see already.
Just, well, tell us about the impetus of the books. What, because podcasting is very different than, sitting down and all the detail that goes into writing a book.
Yeah, they're very different. So with a podcast, I could just sit down and like, hey, I think I should talk about this week, and I do. The books are interesting because in all the time that I spent, helping people with this problem before podcasting, just in forums and things of that nature, and then start to podcast and grow an audience and grow a community around that. About 3 or 4 years ago, people really started to kind of like press on me, like, you should write a book. You should write a book. You should write a book. And I always thought like, yeah, whatever. I'm not going to write a book. I really didn't think I need to write a book. But as it turns out, when you're podcasting on the subject of anxiety disorders and you're encouraging two-way dialogue on this, you could probably appreciate this. Even though I said something in 2017 in a podcast episode, doesn't mean somebody listened to that episode.
Right.
So I found that I was repeating the same information again and again and again. Like I said that 4 times over the past 3 years in podcasts, but I'm also typing it every day on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. So it occurred to me that I should take the things that I know and actually organize them in a book. And that was the genesis of the book. Like I basically wrote a course on how to recover from an anxiety disorder in the form of a book.
Okay.
Yeah. So I could take everything that I say into a microphone or on social media and just go into greater detail and organize it in a logical way where people could go step by step from the earliest information to a recovery plan and executing it and all that stuff without having to dig through 5 years worth of podcast episodes and social media posts, because that's a hard way to get info.
Oh, absolutely. I know. I mean, now that I think it's 8 years in, I just think I finally decided, okay, because I started on Blog Talk Radio and I did delete a bunch of episodes when I moved over to a different platform, but there's still 400 or so. I mean, I have like 2,200, almost 3,000 episodes.
Wow. That's impressive. That's a lot of microphone time.
It is. I mean, I was that, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I did that on purpose, but have you seen, because for me, doing the shows has been part of my mental health care.
Has that been for me? Does that apply to me?
Yeah.
You know what? Like the cool answer is, oh, absolutely it has, but I would be lying. What I find is that I find it incredibly rewarding on a personal level, but I don't feel that doing the podcasts is therapeutic or in any way, any sort of form of self-care or mental health care for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Well, how do I answer that question without sounding like a complete and utter like egomaniac? But, no, you know what? I don't feel like an egomaniac. I spent a lot of time, and actually the first book that I released back in February was just supposed to be the intro of the big recovery guide, and it was just my story. But as I started writing that, it got bigger and bigger. It became its own book. And in that book, An Anxiety Story, I mean, I detail the work that I did. I have put in a tremendous amount of work on me, like to solve those problems and, get myself into a good place. And so I don't, as crazy as it sounds, I don't feel a need to find mental health, self-care things for me right now. I have things. I meditate. I enjoy my hobbies. I like to, hit the gym and, so I do the same things that a lot of people do to manage stress and just be happy, but I don't look for specific things to make sure I'm taking care of my mental health. And I know that's probably a crazy thing for a mental health podcaster to say.
No, that makes,
true.
I mean, I like hearing everybody's different perspectives. Georgia, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to say, everybody has their own different tools. I mean, you're still paying it forward, and that I'm sure is in itself helpful.
It totally is. And it's like I said, it's very personally rewarding. And there's a huge amount of growth for sure, because I get to meet so many people and I get to hear so many variations on the story, and I get to learn all the nuances that people bring based on their own experiences. So it's a very rich experience for sure. I'm so fortunate to be able to have it.
You know where it really helped my mental health care is now I noticed that if I don't do, like, I haven't done as many shows in the last probably 2 months. I haven't done as many. I've done a lot more guesting on other people's things. So I where I find it very, how I've seen that it has benefited me is the fact that I'd be dealing with something like someone that is extremely narcissistic, or I had an episode in Greece with someone who, when they drink, they become violently angry drunk. And so things like that happened in my life, where I could then have a reason to go to some expert or a few and pick their brain about these topics and get an understanding of them. And that helped me deal with what I was dealing with that was affecting my mental health. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Actually, that's super smart, I think. That's like a really healthy way, I think, to do it.
You know, yeah, Drew, this is funny. This will make you laugh. I was talking to somebody and I was just sort of helping them process something. And I am not a therapist. I say that clearly often. And she said, God, you're just so healthy. You're one of the mentally healthiest people I've ever known. And I broke out in laughter. And I was like, boy, that is some sad state of affairs on the planet, if that's true.
We are screwed. Yeah, and it's so funny because I think all of us feel that way in some way, shape, or form. Like, I'm just a big old goofball here that talks to a microphone. Like, why are you looking at me like I got my act together? I'm making it up as I go along, guys. Like, so yeah. I get it. But it sounds like you have a really good system in place there. They think it's cool because you get to access experts, in the topics that are troubling you, and you get to learn something and incorporate it into your experience and maybe pass it along. So, like, win-win.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what you do too. I mean, talking about this and, especially for all the men out there. And I think about too, all of the veterans. I mean, we have a first responder mental health network that I set up because we started having so many shows on that were done by first responders. And of course, what are they talking about? PTSD, anxiety, trauma. And, and the biggest thing that I would hear again and again is, men not part of the anxiety was that they wouldn't open up and talk. So George is right. The fact that you do this, it sounds like it just is naturally you to be this way, but for so many men, it isn't. And it certainly isn't fostered in society more than it used to be, but
Yeah. That's
and
true.
I really say that because I am a veteran. And so I know, and my father's a veteran, but so many people and so many men that I know, actually, that I have retained friendships with, still deal with things,
Yeah. Well,
and it's just, you would think it would be bigger, for them, but it's just so hard.
I find that, the things that I hear men say most often is there's embarrassment that goes along to admitting, that maybe they're carrying some weight or they're dealing with these. My particular issues that I talk about, panic disorder, agoraphobia, a man that has a hard time leaving his house or getting in the car driving to work, he feels embarrassed by that. Especially because of those traditional gender roles. He's supposed to be the breadwinner, the hunter, the gatherer, the warrior. And, sometimes they just feel so weak and they're incredibly embarrassed by that.
Well, because it's how we're socialized. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I'm not saying that any woman invites these problems in any way, shape, or form, but I think from a man's perspective, it seems unfair because we seem to be more accepting. The royal we, societally here, we're more accepting of a woman that speaks about those vulnerabilities and maybe perceived weaknesses than we are of a man.
Right.
Yeah. And it traps some guys. It does keep them trapped. And sometimes their family system just will have none of that. We were not allowed to talk about our feelings, so I cannot be open about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm shocked when I hear he just passed away, but my partner's dad, and then him, and then our son. So we have 3 generations of men, and they do weird things, like if they're all sitting together, they cock their head the same way. Their left toe sticks out a certain way, and that way it's bizarre. But the other way too is to see how different it is was for my partner's father, who my partner had to, force him to say, I love you back.
Yeah.
And then to my son, he runs away from Michael, will be like, give me a kiss, give your dad a kiss. And he's like, oh, dad, get away. But he is very affectionate, very, just different. But to see how the different generations play a role in the, men opening up or not.
Yeah. That's true. It's very true. And it's a shame.
Can we talk about the agoraphobia part? Because that is something that, in fact, it's making me, I want to go now find an expert on that. And here I am talking to one, but that is a piece that people don't really understand. And it's made fun of, it's made light of in movies. Oh, you're afraid to leave your house. And people don't realize what a big deal it is. So can we talk a bit about what that was for you?
You bet. We talk about that all day long if you want. So here's the misconception about agoraphobia in the end. Agoraphobia, everybody seems to know it as, well, this person is afraid to leave their house. But really what agoraphobia is fear of how you feel. Agoraphobia is the ultimate expression of, all right, let's start from the beginning here. Everybody experiences anxiety. Most human beings at some point in their life may experience panic or a panic attack. Some people experience panic attacks and then develop panic disorder because they begin to fear the next attack, and they modify their life because of that. When you develop panic disorder and you begin to modify your life more and more and more to avoid the next panic attack, you are heading to agoraphobia. So while agoraphobia expresses as an inability to leave the house often or an inability to go into certain contexts or situations or places, really what that person is experiencing is an intense fear of the physical sensations and the thoughts that come with anxiety and panic. They've learned to fear their own fight or flight response. And
I totally
they
agree with
avoid,
that.
yeah, they avoid to the nth degree. So agoraphobia is just the ultimate expression of retreat and avoidance. That's all that is.
That is me. That is absolutely me.
Yeah, Georgia, congratulations. Like, that's every agoraphobic. There's no, and I know
this is my safe space and I don't want to leave it because I have a fear of what might happen, and right.
But here's the thing. You're not afraid, and people have a hard time understanding this. So let's say maybe you have a difficult time going to the supermarket, for instance, which may be true or may not be.
Absolutely.
Okay, so find the supermarket. And what most people don't understand about agoraphobia, even agoraphobics, and this is always a revelation when I tell people this, you're not afraid of the supermarket. Like, the supermarket does not pose a threat to you. The supermarket only poses a threat because you have associated it with those sensations and thoughts that you hate and fear. So you have one fear. That is what you feel and what you think. And you have just glued that fear to more and more places and situations and contexts.
I totally agree.
Yeah, till the only place left is your home. And unfortunately, left unchecked, I've seen people who literally have been confined to one room in their home or one piece of furniture in their home.
Yeah.
I was that way for a period of time. I was in a relationship and there were several people living in my small home. Mm-hmm. And so I legitimately stayed on my side of the bed in the corner with the door shut. Nobody's allowed in. Doors are locked. You must knock. I have to let you in because that was my safe space.
Yeah. Very, very common. And I mean, that's tragic. Of course, nobody wants to wind up there. And I've been there. I wasn't confined to a room in the house, but I certainly did that thing where I avoided things until it got to the point where it was difficult for me to leave the house by myself. Agoraphobia usually also includes one or more safe people. Like I will go out as long as my husband's with me, my girlfriend, my wife, my whoever is with me.
That's my daughter. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we think that somehow or other we've decided, since we're terrified of our own bodies, as long as I'm with that person, they'll save me. So we labor under the misconception that we need to be saved when really and truly you've never saved yourself from anything. You never will save yourself anything because you never needed to be saved.
Well, I'll be honest, for me, having somebody there is just, it's not that I'm counting on them to save me. Mm-hmm. It is more that they allow me to have somebody to have a conversation with, and that gives me the ability to distract myself.
It distracts you.
So it's a tool for me. I mean, obviously I need to figure out how to do it the right way. Don't get me wrong. I'm working on that. Always a work in progress.
It's hard. It's hard. I will always say every day, I say these things are hard and scary that I talk about. They are.
Oh, they are. I'm sitting here through this and like my anxiety is so high right now, and I'm just doing my breathing. And it's probably why I've been more quiet than I normally am, but it's just breathe, Georgia, breathe.
Yeah. No one would ever know. You sound great, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, that's the thing about, being a trauma survivor, or, having overcome or dealing with currently depression and anxiety and all those things, is that you actually are built of strong stuff. The fact that you live with these things, that you have overcome many things already. So I think that was a great thing for me to have my therapist, say to me, Kristin, you can look at what you already handle. I was like, oh, I hadn't looked at it that way.
Yeah, and we never do. Like we always shortchange ourselves, always. So, when I'm working with somebody who's dealing with panic disorder, agoraphobia, whatever it is, and I'm also, by the way, officially not a therapist. I say that all the time too. But, like they will always shortchange themselves. Like this is a person who was stuck in their home who is now out doing the school run and doing this and doing that. And one day they have a panic attack they didn't like. And, I'm back to square one. I'm like, you just forgot the last 3 months of hard work that you did.
Right.
You're completely throwing it out the window and only focusing on the bad experience you had today. So that's very common. Very common.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, we've got one of our podcasters, Joe Mitch, he does a Facebook group called Diary of a Depressed Dad. And he was, again, I'm lucky I have all these men that openly share about their feelings. And so when I meet one that's closed off, I'm like, oh, I forgot you still exist. So Joe was talking about, now I'm afraid of answering my phone. I'm afraid of walking to my mailbox because I'm getting what you're saying about agoraphobia and what the fear is actually of in what he was expressing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You start to glue that fear to more and more things over time. And so after a while, people in that situation, it's heartbreaking because they look at themselves as defective, weak, broken, ill, mental illness is a mental illness. It's not. I'm sorry. It's not. It's a cognitive problem. It's a learning problem. It's a bad brain habits problem, and it's fixable. So if I didn't believe that, I would have never started talking into this microphone. But, and I watch people fix it every day. Just, it's hard work, but they fix it.
Yeah, it's hard work. And I like that you've made that definite, the distinction of it, because I do it all the time. I tell people mental health and mental illness are two different things. Stop
Very good.
lumping them together.
Yes, that's actually really good. I like that. I'm stealing that. Can I use that?
Oh God, please. You don't even have to quote me.
I'll quote you. I'll credit you.
I heard that from somebody else. But I watched Lady Gaga, who, listen, that woman has done more for mental health and mental illness than many. And I love her for it. But she was talking to Oprah or somebody also with a huge audience. And she kept saying, mental health is something very serious. You have to get medication. And I kept going, shut up.
Thank you.
Saying that mental health was that.
Right. Thank you.
You just added stigma onto 150 million of your view, so.
I think the other thing that tends to do, look, we could go on for hours if we had the time, but we talk about like somebody like Lady Gaga, and I do credit her for standing up and being brave and saying, I have these problems and you might too. And people need to know that they're not alone and they're not broken. And this is normal problems that human beings have. But sometimes, and this is also that thing where we have social media that allows us to talk about these things more, which is great. But sometimes we can't resist taking a good idea and twisting it. And we do that. And sometimes we normalize that the helplessness of these disorders to such a degree. We talk about them so much and soothe them so much in these circles. It's okay. No one knows how hard it is. We must have awareness. It's okay. It's okay. It's not okay to be afraid to go to the supermarket. It's not okay. It's fixable. So, that's always a tough stance when I take that, but we have to be super careful about that line between awareness and normalizing a victim mentality.
Oh, thank you. Yes. And victim mentality. Okay. First of all, society breeds a victim mentality about everything. You're either prey or a predator. Which side you on? It's that way across the board, and it is as hard as the work that it takes to deal with and get past anxiety issues. It's just as hard to get out of that victim mentality because we don't even know how much it's seeped into our marrow.
Yeah. And especially when all around us, it's supported. I mean, I'm not going to go too far with this, but yes, I believe that we do breed that mentality. And sometimes in our public discussions of these problems, and remember, I'm talking about anxiety disorders, and
Right.
there is trauma, there are abusive things, and people are victimized every day. I'm not invalidating
Absolutely.
that, but we sometimes are so quick to normalize the status as victim, helpless, accommodate me, understand me.
Right.
And we all need that in our lives, but we also have to understand that some things are fixable and changeable, and we can do that. And we don't have to sit passively and hope to get better. We can make it better.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I love what you do because you put the power in the driver's seat of the person having the issue. That's what I love about what you do. And that is truly I think that is why you have such success in people experiencing what you've written and listening to your show, because you're handing them, you're not giving them your power. You're not telling them to put their power in the psychiatrist or in the whatever. You're literally saying, here's the key to your car. Your car is you, and turn the ignition, and I promise you it's going to go.
Right. You can do this. You can drive this car. You can steer the ship. What I always say is the same mechanism, literally, that got you into this corner. I use that analogy all the time. All we're doing is throwing it in reverse, and we're backing you out along the same road until you can get back on your journey again. And some people I find are really jazzed by that. They love when I do that. I just hand it right back to them. Here you go. This is yours. I'm not carrying this for you. You carry it, and I'll cheer for you where you go. Whereas other people aren't necessarily ready yet. They get ruffled by that.
Yes, they do.
No, don't tell me that I have power. Don't tell me that.
Right.
Don't
Or there's
tell me
always
that-
excuses.
Right. I'm mentally ill. I know this is crazy. Clearly, you don't know anything about this. I've been told I don't know anything about it. I've been told that I never experienced anxiety before. I'm clearly a fraud. I've been told all of those things.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Super fun. Super fun.
Yeah, good times.
Those are fun days. Yeah.
Good times.
Those are hashtag days. Super fun. Love my work.
Love my work. Hashtag love my work.
Oh yeah. When I was on a kick on doing every show was about narcissistic personality disorder, and legit.
Yeah.
I grew up around it, and then of course, I thought that those kind of people were normal, and so I welcomed them in. Please come feast upon me. So I did every show about that, and it got to a point where I was like, okay. At some point, you need to graduate beyond this. Yes, you were a victim of that behavior, but not necessarily when you invite them in your life and give them a seat at the table.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. See, we're going to get along so well. I make new BFFs every single day. You're my new one. This is so cool.
Too. I love it. I had somebody hear about what I do. Georgia probably will guess who I'm saying, but they were like, "Oh, you do a mental health thing? Oh, you poor thing." And I was like, "Honey, I have so many friends in my life. You have no idea. All over this planet, it's amazing." And you know what I'm talking about, Drew. It's awesome. I mean, to connect with people, especially being a really empathic person, like I can just plug in, and that's how, you get supercharged that way, and you supercharge people that way too. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, I dig it.
Well, Drew, tell our listeners, where the heck can they find more about you?
Probably the best thing to do. The podcast is everywhere you can listen to podcasts. The podcast is also called The Anxious Truth. That's the name of the big book also, but just go to theanxioustruth.com. All the podcast episodes are there. Information on both books are there. And if you go to theanxioustruth.com/links, you'll find all my social media, my Facebook, I'm not really on Twitter so much, Instagram, Facebook and Instagram primarily, and my Facebook group, which I'm super proud of. Like 4,000 or 5,000 people all moving forward. No victim mentality. We're all about progress, empowering, encouraging, cheerleading. It's awesome. Get in there.
Is it a private group or a public?
No, it's a private group. You have to ask to join, and no one sees what's going on in the group except people who are in the group. So we're careful about that.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, however we came across each other's paths, I'm so excited and happy about it. And thank you for taking the time, because I know you're a busy guy, to come on the show.
Well, I appreciate the invite. It was super nice to talk to both you guys.
It was great talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, Georgia, thank you too.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health News Radio.
Hi, listeners. I'll make it quick. These are some really cool places that give discounts and other cool things for listeners of Mental Health News Radio Network. If you want to get amazing help with healing from narcissistic abuse, go to healfromanarcissist.com. If you want CBD products that are the best of the best, I use them myself, go to proze.com and use the code mentalhealth20, mentalhealth20. If you want to get daily perk ups that help retrain your brain to think more positively, go to perkupdaily.com. And also, just because this one's fun, snarkycandles.com. I guarantee you'll love them. Snarky with a Y, SNARKY, candles.com. And don't forget, if you want to hear all the shows on the network about first responders, you can go to firstrespondermentalhealthnetwork.com, and all of our shows that focus on narcissistic abuse, narcissisticabusehealingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and back to the show.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can fight it, but
Good boy.